our postmodern age of division, anger, anxiety, and confusion, the most dangerous weapon you have is your own mind.
Take control! Question everything!
This is the Intellectual Freedom Podcast.
Welcome back to the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. I'm Dr. David Hopkins, and we are continuing our journey through the most dangerous book in history, in my opinion, Plato's Republic. If you've been with us for the last few episodes, we've been laying the foundation. We've been pouring the concrete. But today, we start framing the house because this is book number 4. And if you've been waiting for the payload, if you've been waiting for Socrates to finally answer the damn question, what is justice? This is the episode you've been waiting for. Everything before this was almost like a setup. Everything after this is an elaboration. And so book 4 is a pivot point for us. And more importantly, it's the moment Plato invents psychology. So before this chapter, we were talking about politics and armies. And after this chapter, we are talking about you. We're talking about why you eat the donut when you're on a diet. We are talking about why you doom scroll when you need to sleep. We are talking about the civil war happening inside your head right now. Wondering, should I turn this off or keep on going? So buckle up. We're going to map the human soul, so to speak. So before we get there, as usual, we need to recap. We need to go back. So book number 1, Socrates knocked out Thrasymachus, that guy who said justice is just for suckers and that power is the only thing that really matters in life. And then in book number 2, we accepted the ultimate challenge, the Ring of Gyges. If you could be invisible and you could commit crimes with 0 consequences, would you still be a good person? We have to prove that justice is good in itself, not just for the reputation. So we get to book 3 and we build on our guardians, about the people that are going to protect this city and kind of advocate to make this justice actually become a reality. We talked about programming their minds, and tuning their bodies and to be philosophical dogs that are dangerous to enemies but gentle to friends. But we still don't have an actual final answer yet from Socrates on what justice is. So here we stand. We've built this perfect city, so to speak, in speech, in our imaginations. It's standing right there, but Socrates looks at it and says, okay, we built a city, but where is the justice? It must be in there somewhere. He says we have to hunt for it like hunters surrounding a bush that might have a beast of prey in there. And his strategy is brilliant. He says, look, there are 4 great virtues. And he identifies these 4 virtues as wisdom, courage, moderation, and justice. If we can't find the first 3, whatever is left over, it just has to be justice. Now, we still have to find these virtues, right? Socrates does something revolutionary. He stops looking at the city and he starts looking at the human being. So if you're reading along in the book, he's kind of meandering to this point and he observes a contradiction. And he says, have you ever been thirsty, like desperately thirsty? But you look at the drink, one comes in front of you. Maybe it was dirty, or maybe it was alcohol, and you're in recovery. Would you refuse to drink? Think about it. Part of you, I'm sure no matter what, if you are dire thirsty, and it's no fun, all of us have been thirsty at some point in our lives. It's part of you internally is just screaming, drink it. But another part of you is saying, do not drink that. That thing is dirty. You're going to get sick from it, or you can't drink that alcohol. You know what alcohol does to you. It's going to mess you up. And Socrates uses the law of non-contradiction, and he says the same thing cannot act in two opposite ways at the same time. So if you are pushing the drink away and pulling it towards you, you're not one person. You're two different people. You're a committee. And that committee is fighting amongst itself. And this leads Socrates to draw the famous map of the soul in the book. And so if you're reading along, you definitely ran across this. He says this to all of us, you are not a unified self. In essence, you have a three-part soul. You have the logisticon, which is reason. And this is the tiny part of you that calculates things, plans things out, looks at the long term, loves truth, looking for facts. This is hopefully the driver of the car. But then you also have a second part, the epithumia, and that's your appetite. And this is massive. It's kind of a multi-headed or a hydra-headed beast. It wants food, it wants sex, it wants comfort, it wants money, it wants power, and it wants it right now. It doesn't care about tomorrow. It only knows what I want and what I want now. Those of you that have a 2-year-old child, they live in that appetite world, right? If you have a dog, most of the time, 99% of the time, at least my dog, he lives in this appetite. If I give my dog a piece of ribeye steak, he is not going to eat a part of it and then take another section of it and stow it away somewhere because he knows that he might be hungry in a few hours. No, it's the appetite. He's going to devour the whole thing instantaneously. That's the appetite. And then we get to the third part of the soul for Socrates as he's pondering us as humans. And he says there's the spirit angle, the thumos. And this is the emotional part. This is the line. This is the part that can feel anger and shame and ambition and pride. And now to prove this, Socrates tells a story. Now the story is actually kind of gross. If you were reading the book, it surely stuck out to you. It's the story of Leonidas, who was a king, a Spartan king. And Leonidas, he's walking down along the north wall of Athens, and he sees a pile of corpses lying there from a recent execution. And now his appetite, Leonidas's appetite says, "Oh, look what I see." It's like that morbid curiosity. But his reason and his spirit are disgusted. They say, "Oh, no, that's gross. Don't even look at it." So initially he covers his face because his reason and his spirit said to do so. But finally the appetite wins, and he forces his eyes open, runs to the corpses, and yells this amazing line at his own eyeballs. Yes, his own eyeballs. He's yelling at them like they're a third person, not part of who he is. And in the book it says, "Look, you damned wretches, take your fill of the fair sight." He's yelling at his own eyes. In essence, that's a civil war inside of his own mind. That is you yelling at yourself after you send that text you knew you shouldn't send. That is you hating yourself for eating the second slice of cake. That's you for engaging in some forum about a politically charged quote unquote debate, but really it isn't a debate, but just a vitriolic set of diatribes with people mocking and yelling and name calling people and that they've never met and probably never will, and surely would never actually say to the person what they're typing online if they were sitting down with them over a cup of coffee. I mean, you get the point, right? The point of Leonidas in the story, his reason and his spirit told him very clearly, don't go there, Leonidas. It isn't necessary. Oh, but the appetites. The appetites want to see all the gory, emotional nastiness of it all and participate in it. You and I have that same internal battle in us all the time. So it's such a relevant point from Plato, and science really actually backs it up here. So in the 1960s, Paul MacLean proposed the triune brain, and this model basically, I'll summarize it really quickly. We all have this aspect to us, this literal lizard brain, which is the basal ganglia portion of our brain. It's the appetite. And then we also have this mammalian brain, which is our limbic system, which is our emotion. And then there sits the human brain, the neocortex, full of reason. And Daniel Kahneman calls it fast emotion, fast brain, the emotional brain, or the second system, which is the slow rational one. And Plato had mapped this out amazingly 2,400 years before an MRI machine was even invented. And so now we usually think of this battle as just reason versus passion, right? The angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other. We all know the cartoons with the good and bad angels whispering in either one of the characters' ear, sitting on their shoulders. But Plato adds that third player, the thumos, or the spirit. And this is crucial. For Plato, spirit is a natural ally of reason. And so when these get in alignment, it's incredibly powerful. Think about it. When you cheat on your diet, your appetite, your lizard brain is happy. It's like, yum, pizza. Your reason is disappointed. Oh, that was bad for my cholesterol, and it's probably going to cause me to gain a couple pounds, and oh my gosh, that might be an extra hour and 15 minutes on a treadmill just to burn off those stupid calories that I just consumed. But who is that part of your brain that feels shame? Who is that part that feels angry at yourself for what you did? Feels bad, feels sad. I mean, each of us, with our spirit, we could react a bit different to a myriad of situations. You know, if I just decide to skip one of my scheduled workout days, I don't think I really feel shame about it. But I am ticked off. I'm ticked off at myself, my soft, weak self, for making up some lame excuse to skip the workout. That I know dang good and well I could have figured out a way to get the workout done and everything else that I used as an excuse to not go to the gym. That's the spirit. That's the lion. We need thumos. We need thumos to push beyond the superficial aspects of life. Having reason without spirit just won't be enough. It won't be enough to get it done from Plato's perspective. So Dr. Roy Burmeister has done famous studies on ego depletion and willpower. And he found that reason is a very weak battery, actually. It gets tired. It gets tired really easily. I mean, let's be real for a second. I mean, we can rationally say that we need to do A, B, C, D, and we can build the argument super easy, but will we follow through with it? Because if you rely only on logic to stay disciplined, you're probably going to fail. You need spirit. You need a sense of identity, of pride, of passion, of goals, of things inside of you that says, I am not the kind of person who does this, or I'm not the kind of person who doesn't do this, depending on that thing, whatever that thing might be. The spirit is the muscle that reason uses to wrestle the appetite into submission. And that's why it's so important in Plato's reason. We cannot skip the spirit in Plato's world. So, okay, I'm sure you get that. Makes sense. You've heard it a million times. YouTube motivational speakers, blah, 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 New Year's resolutions, etc. I know we've all got it. I think for most, but let's try and nail down this thing called justice, because I led the whole podcast with this idea of justice. How does that fit into it? And since the beginning of this dang book, we've been wrestling with what is not justice. So where is justice? We've mapped the soul. We have the driver, reason. We have the lion, the spirit, and we have the monster, the appetite. And so finally, Socrates drops a definition. Justice is not a list of rules. It isn't helping old ladies across the street, although that's a good thing and a nice thing. Are you ready for it? In Plato's mind, justice can be described, in about 4 words. Justice is internal order. Justice comes from and is internal order. A just man or woman is a person whose reason is driving the car, with the spirit riding shotgun to help and keep it going and keep the driver focused. And the appetite? Well, he's locked in the trunk. Or at the very minimum, he's sitting quietly in the back seat by themselves. An unjust man isn't just a quote-unquote criminal. An unjust man is someone whose soul is in chaos because those lizard brain appetites rule their lives. Think about an addict. An addict can be brilliant with very high reason. But unfortunately, he uses his reason to figure out how to get drugs. Heck, there are criminals. There are brilliant criminals. Look at Wall Street. There's brilliant criminals everywhere. They're intellectually astute. But their spirit, those high order concepts, they're infantile and they're controlled by the lizard brain. You know that backseat driver? That's the lizard brain. The reason's supposed to be controlling the show, but it's not. But the driver, rather listening to the person sitting to their right in the front seat, is taking direction from the appetite who's sitting in the back seat. For a criminal or an addict, reason has been enslaved. The monster is driving the car. That, Socrates says, is injustice. It's a psychological civil war fought inside of your mind, inside of my mind, every day. Listen to this quote on the just man. Quote, he sets his own house in good order, binding together those 3 principles and becoming one man instead of many, self-controlled and attuned. Becoming one man instead of many. When we say many, what could that be? Well, are you one person in public and different in private? Are you honest when convenient but dishonest when it's not? Do you work as hard when nobody's watching as you do when people are watching? Man, you become able to control your appetites in your mind. You can become ridiculously powerful. Whether your appetite is drugs, laziness, food, porn, alcohol, or whatever that appetite is that you have that is destructive. Maybe you have multiple. We've all had multiple at different times in our lives. When you learn to control them, which is the goal, then you become just. And if you've got a whole society of people that do that, justice will rule the land. When you have a society that is overrun with the appetites, you will have chaos, division, anger, deception, distrust. Does any of that sound familiar to anybody? What's going on here in the United States and globally these days? Injustice is disintegration. It's falling apart. Justice, on the other hand, is integration. It's becoming whole. It's everybody coming together. So when we ask, is it better to be just than unjust? When someone says it's just all about power, that just isn't true. Socrates isn't buying it. Socrates is effectively asking, is it better to be a sane person than insane? Or is it better to be healthy than to be sick? Of course it is. Of course it is. Even if you had the ring of Gyges, remember that story? Remember that ring that could make you invisible and you could, well, do just about anything to anyone and nobody would know? Socrates is saying that he who wants to be the king of their own soul would do everything and anything in his power, even with the ring of Gyges, to end that civil war in his mind and always be just. Now, before we close, I have to address one objection that comes up inside of this chapter, inside this book. Adeimantus, if you remember him, he's the fun brother. He raises his hand and says, okay, Socrates, yeah. I get it. I get where you're going with this. Sounds wonderful. Sounds great. But he says, quote, Socrates, this sounds boring. What's to live like this? If reason is always in charge, do we ever get to have fun? I mean, he's basically saying, humans, we just need to kick back every now and again and just let loose. Adeimantus says, no offense, Socrates, but your vaunted just guardians sound like probably they are miserable human beings and hate life a whole lot. I mean, Adeimantus, for some of his comments, I mean, he hit some things that, I mean, it's worthwhile that Socrates should have to answer that question, right? Because if you're reading this, you're probably thinking maybe some of the same things. Socrates responds with a metaphor. And he says, you know, and it's an important metaphor, and because it's a good point. And then we all just need to let that lizard brain in all of us run wild every once in a while. And Socrates says, no. Listen to this metaphor. It says, imagine we are painting a statue, a beautiful statue. We want it to be gorgeous. And so we build this beautiful statue of a woman. And we all know, because back then purple would have been considered probably the regal, the most royal, the most beautiful color because it's rare. And then he says, you know, probably the most beautiful part of the body are the eyes, striking eyes, beautiful eyes. You know, that's special. So shouldn't we paint the eyes purple? And of course the answer is no, because if you paint the eyes purple, they don't look like eyes anymore. Your statue of this beautiful woman would turn into somebody that would look like a monster. You have to paint the eyes black or brown or blue or green, you know, whatever your favorite color is, to make the whole look beautiful. And this is the lesson from this metaphor as Socrates lays it out. It's do not maximize the part, the small piece, at the expense of of the whole. You know, we live in a world that screams, paint the eyes purple, chase the dopamine, eat the food, party hard, get the money, buy the car, maximize the appetite. We're surrounded by it all day long, every single day. But Socrates warns us, you know, if you maximize the pleasure of the parts, you destroy the function of the whole human. Dr. Robert Lustig, he wrote a book, great book, called The Hacking of the American Mind. Highly recommend you read it. He distinguishes between pleasure, which is the dopamine, and happiness, which is serotonin and contentment. They're very biologically different. And if you choose pleasure, purple eyes, you actually downregulate your ability to feel happiness in the long run. So Socrates is telling us, don't chase the spike. Don't chase the spike. Build a beautiful statue. It persists. It's your long-term happiness. Love that analogy. Now, I want you to consider this. What if I gave you $1 million a year for the rest of your life? Congratulations. Now, for this $1 million a year, I attach 0 strings to it. No strings, by the way. You're going to go live on a beach on a beautiful Caribbean island. Do whatever you want. Every day, all day on this island. Eat, drink, party with the natives, party with the vacationers, hang out on the beach. Heck, buy a yacht. Cruise around. Deep sea fish. Want to get off the ocean? Go golfing. Heck, I don't care. Entertain yourself with drugs, sex, and rock and roll if you want. Whatever you want to do. So you might think, wow, this is amazing and beautiful and perfect. It's the Instagram story book life. Now flash forward. You're still doing it literally the same thing. Maybe switching up pleasures every now and again after a month. Then flash forward 6 months or a year. Think you would still be getting that same dopamine lizard brain hit? Heck, after a while, you're going to get tired of it. Some people might get tired in a few weeks of just drinking, partying, laying around on the beach. Others might take a year, might take 2, but in the end, that low level, that lizard brain, that appetite, those purple eyes that Socrates uses in his analogy, they can't satisfy you in life. It just can't happen. So you can't stay down there. So when Adamantus says, sounds like a boring, terrible life, you never have fun. But think about it. Think about it. Here's your homework. Here's your audit. I want you to look at your life this week, and I want you to ask, who's driving your car when you make a decision? Day to day, moment to moment, we make hundreds, if not over 1,000 decisions. Many of them tiny, little, minute ones, but other ones are bigger. When you make a decision, is it the appetite that makes the decision, makes the call? I want it now. Or is it the driver? This is what is best. The rational, the reason. Or is it your spirit? That deepest sense of being. The thing that makes you you. Which one makes the decision? Because justice isn't about being nice or satisfying some need. Justice to Socrates and Plato is about being in charge. It's about ending that civil war inside your head and becoming one person instead of many. This is justice. Took us a long time to arrive here, didn't it? Hope it wasn't anticlimactic for you, but justice and living a just life is inside of you. It isn't some politician, some law, some Supreme Court decision, or some other external thing you want to fight against. The fight, the real fight for justice is happening inside of you, and it's happening inside of you right now while you listen to this. But the ride isn't over. I mean, we are nowhere near solving the meaning or being of civilization, and we're actually just getting started, because just as this one issue is settling down at the end of this book, Socrates is about to get hit by another angle of this city of just guardians and building the perfect city. And in the next episode, book 5, we hit the famous 3 waves. We're going to talk about feminism, communism, and the wildest idea in the whole book, the philosopher king. It's going to be fun. I'm glad you're with me. I'm Dr. David Hopkins. Set your house in order. I'll do the same, or at least I'm going to try on my end, and I'll see you in the next episode.